This week on LTC News. Coming to your pocket soon, a new Lowell quarter.
I think it's a really proud moment, not only for the park, but also the city.
Water everywhere at the Southeast Asian Water Festival.
Too bad it's raining so hard, but we really happy to see all the people still in here,
And a loss for democracy in Cambodia.
Freedom and liberty for Cambodia.
Stay with us. Welcome to LTC News. I'm your news anchor, Alanna Flood. Many in Lowell's Cambodian community reacted with dismay to the complete takeover of Cambodia's government by Hun Sen and his ruling political party following the general elections on July 29. It was declared a landslide victory for the CPP, the Cambodian People's Party, in what international observers called a totally fraudulent election. Lowell City Councilor Vesna Noon explains.
Prior to the election, the ruling party actually banned, the independent media, dissolved the opposition parties and imprisoned the opposition leader. That's not enough. The international community, the European Union, urged them to go to the table and to have the dialogue before the election. America did the same thing, Japan did the same thing, expressed their concern of this past election, which is a couple of weeks ago, yet the government will go through it. In doing so, what they did was they actually threatening, fine and imprison those who not going to vote. Not voting was impossible, if not suicidal, yet millions of Cambodians in Cambodia chose not to go. And those who went to the poll actually do a cross in protest the election.
In response to the election, the U.S. Congress passed one resolution and is considering another. The resolutions will impose repercussions that will encourage the Cambodian government to reconsider its authoritarian direction. Councilor Noon brought the issue to the Lowell City Council meeting on August 14th, asking the council to voice its support of the congressional resolutions. Community members spoke out in support.
We have to send out a united message from you, the representatives of Lowell, the leaders of a true democratic city, that we know what a sham election looks like. We do not support corruption. We will not hide or allow supporters of such wrongdoings to negotiate or bring forth an alliance and undermine our values and integrity.
Whatever happened in Cambodia has affected all of us, although we are living 8,680 miles from Cambodia. It affects all of us. And I'm sure that, Councillor Rita and Ronnie Elliott went to Cambodia, you can feel the emotion that went through all of us.
The other bill that was also significant was the Senate bill 2412. That Senate bill actually has to do with Paris Peace Accord. America was one of the signatories in this peace accord in 1991. What the Senate do is that urging the government, urging the signatory to re-examine that implementation of that Paris Peace Accord.
We've collected over 700 signatures right here. And we will continue to push this bill until both houses of Congress pass it as law. Freedom and liberty for Cambodia.
Right now, the future of democracy in Cambodia rely heavily on the European Union and America and all the free world, Japan included. If you notice that the people that support the election was communists, with dictators like China, North Korea, Cuba. You don't count those countries really. I mean, because we here in America, we feel democracy is important. So that's why I did what I did. I filed a motion that was unanimously passed by the council.
As Cambodia becomes more repressive and aligns closer to China than to Western democracies, Cambodian Americans who speak out are increasingly wary of traveling back to their homeland. LTC News will continue to follow this important story. Lowell's annual Southeast Asian Water Festival took place on Saturday, August 18th at Sampis Pavilion. Despite heavy rain, the festival went on with enthusiasm. The big crowd enjoyed sampling Asian food and taking in the music and dance performances. The highlight of the festival is always the boat races, which this year attracted 10 teams racing on the Merrimack in traditional Cambodian longboats.
For me,
I would like to bring up this team because of Tomatero Saukon, the monk who just passed away, who the one bring this program up for Southeast Water Festival. This is the 21st annual. So he passed away, and for me, I would like to bring it up for the memory for the next generation.
I like buying the foods because even though I have it almost every day, it's just nice to just kind of have it from other people and you're not cooking it yourself.
Too bad it's raining so hard, but we really happy to see all the people still in here, you know. Hopefully raining stops soon.
Everyone's like hiding under the tent, so we should have had a bigger tent so they could hide under here, but.
I like the festival. I'm very happy to meet all the people. And then especially I speak Cambodian too. I'm Chinese, I speak all the language too.
Honestly, it's awesome to just walk up and down the boulevard here and actually be able to see all the different stands and get all the food. And there's like the sugar cane drink, that's really good.
We tried sugar cane and loved it, and then all the food, everything is great.
She saw the first Cambodian parade come by with the costumes and everything, so it was very unique for her.
Yeah.
So we really want to win first place, but of course, this year, you know, this is our first time as a team this year. We're a new team, new, young, old, that doesn't matter. We have a lot of energy. All the generations coming together, a lot of energy. We're going to come out here today and do our best. We want to put on a great show for everyone.
The champion team of the boat race was once again the Team New England Top Gun. Eastern Bank opened its doors in Lynn, Massachusetts in 1818 and has grown to cover over 120 locations in eastern New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. Its first depositor was a woman named Rebecca Sutton, and to mark the 200th anniversary of that occasion, the bank's charitable foundation recently announced a series of targeted grants to nonprofit organizations that work with issues that disproportionately impact women, such as sexual assault, domestic violence, human trafficking, healthcare, pay equity, and more. The entire grant award is for $1.7 million.
Every targeted grant recipient will receive $10,000. So we're giving 170 organizations $10,000.
Eastern Bank CEO Bob Rivers says that the bank believes that the targeted grants contribute to real progress around the advancement of women in our local communities. 6 Lowell-based nonprofits were selected as $10,000 recipients.
There are a lot of organizations in Lowell that focus on women, and we just feel this is a way for the bank to help them pursue something they may not have been able to do.
The bank provided statistics showing that in the United States, a woman is assaulted every 9 seconds. Lowell Community Health Center will use its grant monies to fund a domestic violence outreach program.
We will be doing our old school outreach, street outreach, meeting people where they're at. So like hair salons, nail salons, maybe small grocery stores that the community goes to, places where people may not typically go and do outreach at.
The program will teach small business owners how to recognize the signs of domestic abuse and how to direct their customers to get help.
Because they're not going to come to the health center when they have a black eye or if they're bruised up or they have some cuts. So but they may go to their nail person because they really love to get their nails done, right? Or they need to get a haircut.
Women represent fewer than 25% of those employed in computer and mathematical occupations, and only 15% in architecture and engineering. Project Learn will use its grant to support its Girls Who Code program. During the next school year, 300 girls will learn the basics of computer science and a variety of programming languages and get to work on a real-world computer science project. Girls Inc. of Greater Lowell will use its money to take its leadership in academic programming out to after-school programs in local schools.
And our focus is on empowering and educating girls to help them make good choices for their future and just to bring them up to a comfort level to advocate for themselves and to be early leaders within their community. And being able to do that with all of the schools in the community, because that's ultimately our goal, is to have a presence in every Lowell public school and then expand beyond that to the other communities. Just being able to have a presence with that many girls and that much of an impact is a huge goal for us.
The Center for Hope and Healing in Lowell will use its grant award toward services for youth impacted by commercial sexual exploitation or human trafficking. The local office of the Department of Children and Families reports that they see between 5 and 10 new cases per month and believe that many more go unreported. Acre Family Child Care and the Lowell Community Loan Fund were also awarded $10,000 to further the work of their organizations. The Lowell National Historical Park is slated to be portrayed on the first state quarter released in 2019. That's right, Lowell is going to be on U.S. currency. The America the Beautiful Quarter Series will feature one of Lowell's mill girls, as well as the Boot Cotton Mill Clock Tower and Smokestack.
We're very excited that Lowell will be featured on a quarter, and this has been a long process, a long time in coming, and it started back in 2009 with the establishment of the America the Beautiful Quarter program by the United States Mint. The United States Mint was featuring federal lands on a series of quarters. They were going to issue 5 of them each year. Each one would highlight a different kind of federal land, mostly national parks, from each state and each territory. There was a public voting process that then Governor Deval Patrick engaged in with folks in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and Lowell National Historical Park won. And so now that was about 8 or 9 years ago. There have been a series of quarters that have been issued by the United States Mint, 5 of them a year, just as programmed, and the Lowell quarter is slated to come out in February of 2019. One of the most interesting parts of the process that has happened in the last year is selecting the design. The United States Mint engaged several of its artists through something called the Artistic Infusion Program. They came up with a series of designs using information that we supplied to them about Lowell National Historical Park's themes and our history and our different stories, and used that to come up with 18 different candidate designs. And then those designs went through a pretty rigorous selection process, going through a couple of national advisory bodies of coin collectors, through the Commission for Fine Arts. The governor weighed in on his choice. The park had its choice. And very exciting, this August 14th, just recently, the United States Mint announced the design for the Lowell Quarter. And we're looking forward to the quarter being issued in February of 2019. Of all the 18 designs, we think the one that was selected does the best job of conveying the range of stories that Lowell has to offer. And we're in a great place to see that. In the background of the quarter is the emblematic, iconic Boot Mill Clock Tower that you see just behind me. And that clock tower tells a couple of stories. With the clock that's so prominently placed there, it speaks to the idea of the changing conception of what time was all about that workers were experiencing in the early part of the Industrial Revolution. They're coming off of the farms in northern New England where time is governed by the seasons and the rhythms of nature, coming here to Lowell where time is governed by the clock and by bells and by overseers. Different, sort of much more regimented idea of time. One of the important stories that we tell here. Just beside that clock tower is a smokestack which speaks to the different ways that the mills were powered. Originally the mills are powered by water power, the canals running through Lowell. That smokestack indicates a shift over to steam power. At the base of that would have been a steam engine. So those two stories are in that window frame, but also a great one that's more recent, and that is the story of the park's work here in the city in helping to preserve some of these important historic places. The park was instrumental in helping to preserve that clock tower. Yeah, I think it's a really proud moment, not only for the park, but also the city. The quarter itself doesn't say Lowell National Historical Park, it says Lowell. And so people anywhere that connect to Lowell, connect to its story, the residents here, people that have flowed through Lowell in the course of its history will find a little piece of home when they find that quarter. And there'll be a lot of them out there. Somewhere between 400 and 800 million of these quarters will be out all across the country in collectors' hands and just in regular circulation. And what we hope is people that are familiar with Lowell will find a way to reconnect to it through the image that's on the quarter, but also people that don't know about Lowell will get that quarter, look at the design, see not only the clock tower, but the worker that's there and the loom that's there, and think about Lowell and wonder what that place is all about, and hopefully be inspired to come here and check it out, or maybe even check us out online.
In this week's Sunspot, Lowell Sun Enterprise editor Chris Scott sits down with Lowell's new police superintendent, Kelly Richardson.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Chris Scott, the Enterprise Editor at The Sun. Thanks for tuning in to this week's edition of Sunspot. We're going to veer off the path that we've been on the past couple of weeks. We've had the congressional candidates on, but there's been other news in the city as well, including the appointment of a new police superintendent. Bill Taylor resigned earlier this year, and with us today is Raymond Kelly Richardson. Congratulations.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, you've been with the department for 31 years.
Correct.
You've started off as a sergeant, lieutenant, captain, deputy, and I'm very familiar with the deputy because I covered that promotional process, and now you're the chief.
Yes, I am. Very fortunate.
So, talking off air, you've been talking about the support that you've received in the community and from law enforcement. Maybe you could elaborate on that a little bit and just tell us what you've been hearing out there and how it has made you feel since you officially took the reins last week, right? Last Tuesday, I think it was?
Today's day 7.
Yeah, okay. Day 7.
The day's already, yeah. No,
the best day was day 1, right?
Day 1, and then it kind of, yeah. It's a very interesting job, very busy job. But yeah, the support across the city has just been completely unbelievable. The external support, the internal support with the men and women of the organization, both sworn and non-sworn, they seem to be very happy, you know, and I'm very honored to be their superintendent, and I'll work hard to keep their respect, both sworn and non-sworn. And the people that live in this city, I'm overwhelmed. Just the support, like I said, that I have, and it won't be forgotten. I've heard what they've had to say. I know what they want. You think that you know everything that's going on, and I listened and spoke to a lot of people that were involved in the listening sessions. I spoke to the manager, and it was kind of a little bit eye-opening for me.
How was it eye-opening?
Well, I thought I had a pretty good thumb on what was going on, and I know I tried to stay in contact when I spent the 11 months as the deputy. I was still out there in the community and stuff like that. But it's good because it's something I've always kind of requested and asked for during my tenure as either captain or deputy superintendent, that I need to reach out to more people. And I would go to these neighborhood meetings, and I said, you know, I can read every police report in this city, and I try to do that. It's very difficult now, and I listen to all the neighborhood groups, but I think we need to have more people involved in those neighborhood groups. And I stress that all the time, that we need to hear from everybody in the city. You know, I don't know what's going on unless I hear it from the people. Reports don't really reflect what's really going on in the neighborhood. Well, now here we are, and it's kind of what I wanted. It was kind of eye-opening, but in a way, to me, a huge opportunity to be able to get even more deeper into the community and find out what the real issues are, because I can't fix what's broken if I don't know what's broken.
I want to ask you about an anecdote that was relayed to me that I used in the Sunday Political column a couple weeks ago, where there was a neighborhood meeting somewhere, I think it was in Centerville, and I see you laughing.
Yeah,
and
the family had a good
I think
laugh
you
on that
showed
one.
up in flip-flops and a tank top because you came in from the beach. And,
well, I wouldn't wear a tank top at my age, but yeah, I definitely had shorts.
I'm embellishing that a little bit, but it's stories like that that I've heard that have really resonated in the community, that you showed that kind of commitment. What was the circumstance that night? Do you remember what that was specifically?
I remember we had just moved into Centerville in our brand new precinct, and we had crime analysts that never really been over to that part of the city. And within like 2 days of moving into that precinct, there was a shots fired on West 4th Street, and one of the rounds traveled across all the way up West 4th Street, across Bridge Street, and hit a building 2 doors away from where we were housed. And very disturbing. Even our crime analyst, Allison, that was kind of like, well, this is why I'm working here, you know, because you get the window right by it, you know, and obviously the neighbors were very upset. And I had walked the neighborhood like one of the first couple of days over there, and one of the women that was sitting on the stoop with her children was again on West 4th, and I had asked her why she wasn't up at the park with her kids, and she goes, "Oh, I don't take my kids up that park. That's a bad place."
Meaning what, McPherson?
Eagle Park. No,
Oh,
Eagle
Eagle,
Park.
yeah.
So I walked over there, and then we kind of put the pressure on. After the shooting happened a couple of days after that, then we put the pressure on the park, and there was actually a foot chase over there where someone ran from the police and took a gun and threw it up on that old abandoned water building that's there, and we made the arrest. We recovered the weapon with the help of the fire department. So there was some challenges definitely as soon as we moved in there. So I knew that the only way I was going to solve any of the problems over there was to show the officers that I'm pretty committed. I'd like to lead by example. So yeah, you know what? That's what's good about staying in Seabrook or the Lowell Riviera, as I joke around with people at the neighborhood groups, because
and I haven't forgotten that.
Yeah, well, it's all Lowell people there, but they got their bathing suits on. It's the same thing, you know. But it's people from everywhere. So you know, obviously it's a quick ride. That's the advantage of being in Seabrook. It's a family vacation. We go every two weeks in the middle of July. So, you know, I had my time on the beach, and I said to Brenda, I said to my wife, and I said, you know what, I think I'm going to take a ride back. This is important. She said, yeah, fine. By the time you come back, then it should be ready.
It seemed like a pretty good move.
Yeah, well, you know what, it wasn't done as a show. I didn't know who was going to be at the meeting, because in the summer meetings, it's usually, they're not as well attended as when the weather's
just
cold.
The real diehards.
Because people, well, I couldn't remember who said that. Which constable was there that would have seen that. I was shocked that story even came back to bite me or whatever.
No, it did come back to bite you.
Yeah, I laughed, the whole family laughed about that one. And so then I saw Constable Samaras a couple of days later, and he didn't see me coming up behind him. He goes, hey, you got your shorts and flip-flops on? And he turned around, and then at that point I kind of knew he was the one, right? So,
so I want you to touch base on your wife in a minute, on Brenda, because of something you said earlier. But I just got to move it along a little bit quickly. We were talking about shots fired. So in the transition between Jack Webb retiring and you coming on, it seems that that number of incidents of just shots fired across the city this summer has been fairly high. Now, there haven't been, correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, carnage because of shots fired. But shots fired, to me, if you live in that neighborhood, it can be extremely unsettling. What is behind that? You know, your predecessors in the chief's job has told me that when they were, you know, young officers on the beat, no one had guns. But today, everyone has a gun.
It's unbelievable.
And they
it's
just
really
can you just talk about that for a little bit, and how you're trying to address that shots fired?
Right. Well, I think on day 7, I've been watching this very closely, and I did make a commitment that those shots fired are not going to go unanswered by me. I think it's a huge problem. I wouldn't want to live in a neighborhood and be woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning hearing gunshots. You know, if it's fireworks and gunshots, and who knows where those rounds are going to go. And we've had rounds going up people's homes, and you know, we're not going to tolerate that. And it's very disturbing to see how many people have guns out there. We had an incident last week down on Jackson Street, and all it was some person that went in and had a drink with a woman in an apartment, and he left, and 2 guys tried to rob him. I think it was kind of a setup, because they asked him to pay for the drink. Long shot of it, he jumps in the cab and they drive away, and needlessly, the person's already gone. They fire a shot on Jackson Street. Now, when you fire a shot on Jackson Street, a lot of people hear it. Now, it's very disturbing. But these young officers on the late shift, Connor Elmore, young Ray Jean's son, they all pulled it together with 2 of the other officers, Ed Davis's kid and so forth, and they were able to track the people back to a home. They were able to get into the house and speak to the people in there. They made the arrest. They secured the place. They recovered the gun. So the win with that is that we get the gun off the street.
So what do you say to neighborhood residents and neighborhood leaders about what you're trying to do to rein in this kind of crazy wanton use of firearms, even if they're not being shot like directly at somebody?
No, but they send signals to people. They'll shoot cars up. You know, obviously we do investigations on what correlation the address has to particular gang activity that's going on. The patrol force, you know, we're very proactive. We have young officers that go out there, and but you have to be careful of that too. You want to make sure when you're into a neighborhood, you're dealing with the right people, and you're dealing with people the right way, if you know what I mean. You just don't go in and turn everybody upside down. We don't want to turn our allies into our enemies. So it's very difficult to do, but I think that our officers are very level-headed, and they're able to handle that. The problem we have is the general perception of police across the country right now, and I don't think that we have that in the city, but I'm going to get even down deeper.
The general perception of police officers across the country is what?
Is basically that they're the enemy, they're the warriors, not the guardians, and I don't think that's true here with the local police department.
I don't believe it is.
No, I think that You know, in many instances across the country that the officers they're not perfect. There were some things that I've seen, I'd be like, oh my God, you know, and then there's other times that I think that basically people tend to turn the guardians into warriors. They force them into that position. So, but I think
that's a whole nother topic. I could spend 2 hours
we could
with
go
you
on for hours about that. But yeah, definitely I want to speak to the youth in the city. I'm going to talk about that during my speech tomorrow when I get sworn in again. But yeah, it's been a long run. But yeah, it's definitely, I want to hear from people, and I know that there's also some concern out there about, you know, diversity in the department. And, you know, when you hear these things, it's kind of like, but this is what I asked for. In a way, this is what I want to hear. And definitely, we want diversity in our department. We have great officers that work in there now. I want the department.
Well, the OPD has tried.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, there's some limitations. And I think there's going to be a discussion. I'm going to have a lunch with one of our people that are, want to see this happen, Bobby, and we're going to sit down and have lunch. And he has a background in it, so I'm going to be asking
Bobby
him.
Tubayali.
Yes, absolutely. So Bobby and I are going to have a discussion about that, and I believe that's his background. So I think that he could be an asset for us as far as recruiting. I mean, obviously we're restricted by civil service law and what we can do, and but a lot of people aren't taking the exam for the very thing that we talked about earlier about the perception of police now in the country. It's dropped right across the state. I mean, Boston used to have 4,000 or 5,000 applicants. They only had 1,200 last time.
Unfortunately, we have 2 minutes left. I just want, this is an opportunity for you to give your wife a plug. You were saying Brenda Tully from Dunstable.
Absolutely.
You were saying off the air that when you were studying for exams, you kind of refocused your efforts, so you weren't maybe you were spending more quality time. Just tell us about that little story.
Yeah, I mean, my wife went to Boston College, very smart girl. I have no idea why she's with me, but and she's going to kill me for this. But yeah, she was definitely the one that sat me down early on when we first met and said, basically, you're just reading too much here. You need to break it down more. And you know, I put a lot. She provided me the time to do it when the kids were young on the beach. You know, the kids used to laugh about that. He goes, "Oh, that's studying on the beach in the Lower Riviera." Paid off because you had to start studying in January. The exams were always in October, and I hated that. And you couldn't just stop in the middle of summer and all of a sudden just shut it down, because I never really competed against anyone at the department. What Brenda taught me is you need to compete against yourself. And when you have to read those boring books, the other one has to push yourself to say, all right, I got to read 3 or 4 chapters this morning, 3 or 4 chapters tonight. And even when I was in the criminal bureau, I'd get up at 5 in the morning and read for 2 hours before I went to work at 7:30, 8 o'clock, because I never knew where the day was going to take me.
Oh, good for your wife. Good for her.
Yeah,
and I give a plug to your wife, Brenda. We only have about 30 seconds left. You come from a family of police officers. Your brother, Kevin, is the former chief in Dracut, and your father, Ray, was a long-time Lowell police officer who was, I think I knew when I was a cub reporter, kind of a titan on the streets. What do you think your late father is saying today about you sitting in this chair as the superintendent? And then we'll end it at that.
Well, knowing what kind of student I was, he probably scratched his head a little bit, but I think he'd be I think he'd be
What
proud.
was the quote you used? It takes
me an hour and a half to watch 60 Minutes, yeah. But no, I think he'd be proud. He, you know, he made it to sergeant. He was very happy with that. And when I took my lieutenant's exam, he was the one that pushed me to take the captain exam. And I said, I thought, wait a minute, you told me my whole life that the sergeants do all the work, the captains take all the heat, the lieutenants walk right down the middle. Why do I want to be a captain? Well, I can't say on air what he said, but I'll tell you privately, it's kind of funny. But
okay.
It was interesting.
Well, Kelly, thanks so much for coming in. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you,
Bill Taylor was always a willing participant to come into this chair. Hopefully you will be as well moving forward as issues come before the city and the Lowell Police Department. And I wish you luck in your new job.
I appreciate it, Chris.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning in to this latest edition of Sunspot. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with someone else. Have a good night, everyone.
That's it for this edition of LTC News. You can find us on LTC channels 899, online at ltc.org, on Roku at LTC Lowell, or get the link on Facebook. I'm Alanna Flood. Thanks for joining us.